Hello, everybody. Welcome to Film Family, and today we will be reviewing The Lighthouse. So, the second movie from Robert Eggers after The Witch, which unfortunately I haven't seen. Taj has seen it; he likes it.
Yeah.
And people were excited for this movie. People really like The Witch, and so what has he got for this one? Well, he's got these two lighthouse keepers, on this island, alone. Then some stuff goes down. Draw a little bit towards insanity, and kind of it unfolds. So. Yeah, this is definitely a quiet movie. This is definitely an Oscar movie. And by Oscar, you usually mean a quiet movie. Sometimes it'll be drawn out, usually well acted. I don't mean that to insult Oscar movies because there's a lot of Oscar movies that are fantastic. There's a lot of Oscar movies that I hate. And this movie's sort of in the middle of that because this movie is not pretentious. I don't like to use that word unless I absolutely mean it. And people will always call every movie that everyone's an Oscar pretentious, which is sort of a big problem with just film fans and criticism in general. But I thought this movie, just for me personally, had a couple of things that I personally wasn't a big fan of. But as a full film, I think it was definitely a really solid just piece of filmmaking and has two great performances from Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe.
Where do I start? I enjoyed this movie. I'm going to start with that because I'm going to start crapping on the movie, but I really enjoyed it only because of the two actors. They were amazing in it. William Dafoe was absolutely amazing, and Robert held his own, and I always had respect for him anyway. Yeah. I'm not going to say that I was never one of those people that crapped on him, but you can see that he's a seasoned actor as well. Like, he deserves his respect.
It's really cool too when you see an actor come from a certain role, sort of get maybe not even typecast, but sort of labeled as you'll never be anything more than that.
We
sort
won't
of
take
get
you
hated
serious.
on, and then kind of work with each new project and show no, you're not gonna box me in, and I'm not gonna be what you want because here's what I can do. And you're like, oh dang, this guy's good. It's even what Todd Phillips did this year with the Joker. He's like, I'm just not gonna be what you expect. I'm gonna be what I want to be and do what I want to do, and you're gonna be impressed because what I did is great. And
That's
I
very
really
true.
was appreciative of Robert Pattinson in this movie.
That's very true. And so for me, I did like the movie just because I like to see these two actors, their scenes together. And the descent into madness, as you said, it was an amazing transformation to see. But the pacing of it for me was very hard. I mean, I think I fell asleep 3 times in the movie. I made a joke. Instead of Lighthouse, call it Lights Out because I was you shouldn't struggle to stay up, and I wasn't tired. That's the problem. But I was
the funny part is that it's an hour and 50 minutes, which is pretty short. And it feels a little long. At first I was like, all right, I'm probably an hour in right now, and I'm very, very anti pulling your phone out during the movie, so don't think I'm encouraging. I just pulled my phone out just really quick just to check, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, about an hour in, and I was like, so there's only 50 minutes left. And I was like, it's been another 2 hours. Yeah. And it was only 30 minutes. And I felt like I was going insane with the characters because
maybe that was the point.
By the second half of the movie, it's in the first maybe 10, 15 minutes have I think 2 words said. Yeah. But by the time you get to the end, you feel like you're going insane. Maybe that's a good thing though. I don't mean that to be I was so bored in this movie because I wasn't necessarily bored. No. I was just my brain sort of was slowed down by the movie slowness, and that's not always a bad thing. And I don't mean that insulting.
No, I know.
I just felt
my
here's
brain slowed down
the pace
too.
we're moving at. And those quiet scenes sometimes drag on a little bit. But I think it's always intentional. When you get a talented director like Robert Eggers, who's also the writer with his brother, I think, it's definitely a movie that's looking to kind of at least annoy you, sort of, or fluster you, sort of in the same way as the characters.
Yeah. It's hard because it's I wasn't kidding. I fell asleep 3 times. And the problem with that was that every time I woke up, I felt like I didn't miss anything. Usually you miss something. You're like, okay, what happened? Where are we now? And the thing is that every scene that I saw that I woke, I was up for, was amazing. In terms of it was here's his descent into madness here, and then here's this guy kind of edging him on into madness.
Yeah.
And it's so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the angles. I enjoyed, we talked about, the treatment in terms of whether it was shot in black and white and the grain and all that stuff. It was really well done.
Good looking movie.
Good looking movie, very artistic, and so it has nothing to do with that. What the pace was just really slow for me, and I like slow movies, but this maybe it was the wrong day for me, but this really was slow for me.
Yeah, so let me preface this. I actually really don't like slow movies.
Yeah.
I think some people, and even like some, film intellectuals will be like, oh, you need to watch this movie that's 2.5 hours and has almost no dialogue because that's what real cinema is, and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings aren't.
Yeah.
There are people like that, and I don't think this movie's for those people. Like in terms of the movie's trying to be for those people will like this movie. But I think like when you get people like that who encourage movies that have like no dialogue and are extremely quiet and slow and act like that's the only way to make an effective movie, I don't like those people. They're quite pretentious, but this movie I think is actually very good at relatively spacing itself out, but it's just some of the scenes feel so long, and I think it's the use of silence that really makes the movie feel like sort of just arduous to get through. But it's not like a bad or boring movie. It's just that there's some scenes, and then it'll be accompanied by a scene that feels almost like from a completely different movie. The movie mixes like spiritual and flashy humor, and those are two things that I wouldn't expect to go together, but it does it relatively well. And, just the way that the movie kind of flip-flops between scenes of, like, what it wants to be from this weird thing of, I don't know, I forgot both the characters' names, but, from Robert Pattinson's character kind of going insane, seeing this mermaid, and then William Dafoe just kind of, like, being this sort of bully, older figure. It's just kind of weird to see how the movie just sort of does all these different things in its runtime, and also how the movie sort of tries to kind of push this idea onto the audience themselves that there is sort of an insanity that's being thrust upon them.
Interesting. Yeah, because, I felt like this, and I'll try and be nice about it. I felt like I was fishing, on a boat fishing, and just nothing, you're waiting for that tug on your line, and you get it every once in a while. And I just felt like the pace, and I keep saying that, but I think you guys are going to, if you watch this, you'll understand. I had flashbacks of Tree of Life, which I said, and that's not a good thing. And for me, where it's like literally you're thrown into something and you're like, okay, what the heck is happening? And I'll watch a movie twice or 3 times to get it. But if I know during the second and third time I'm never going to get it, like the mermaid thing, I don't care. I could watch that 50 times and be like, okay, why is that mermaid there? It's not like I don't think it. Looking back, I don't think it explains that.
Sometimes a movie might do that and totally want to do that and
just to
like,
have people talking.
We just want you to be confused, and and I sometimes
he was confused.
Yeah, because you can always make a defense of anything ever in a movie and be like, oh, here's the director's intention. But I think you should only be allowed to do that if a director has had previous works where it shows that they know what they're doing. Like if it's a director's first movie and it's like, all right, well, this guy clearly knew that this movie wasn't good enough, so they just put something ambiguous in it. I don't think this is one of those movies. I think Robert Eggers is an intelligent dude and he's a talented dude, and he wants the audience for this movie, probably even more than The Witch, because I haven't seen The Witch, so I don't know what's going on in that movie, but probably even more than The Witch, sort of have this very ambiguous feel, but also a very spiritual feel, because like I was saying in the Ad Astra movie review, I think there's 3 types of movies, which is like active, passive, and sensory, and I think this movie is like a mix of sensory and passive, because passive because the plot doesn't move that fast, but sensory because it's so much of the movie basks in its own silence. And when you get a movie like that, they usually are tough to kind of enjoy all the way because of when you think about it, we communicate through talking. Like that's what we learn to do. So when you go into this movie and when you go to a film, you're expecting to see things on your screen that are accompanied by noise. That's how film works. You're not expecting to sit there and just watch visuals and hear dialogue very little. And then when you do hear the dialogue, it's like 1890s New England slang.
Under a lot of rain.
Under a lot of rain.
And storm, where you're like, what did you say again?
Under William Dafoe's gravelly voice. And you're just like, what in the universe are these guys talking about? So I think it will turn some people off. And it even turned me off a little. I don't want to sound like I'm the guy who knows exactly what he's talking about, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't really get about this movie. But I can appreciate when a movie comes along and says, hey, here's what you expect, and here's what I'll give to you. And it's not necessarily what you expect, but you can appreciate it or you can't, And that's something I appreciate about the movie. But I think my favorite thing about the movie, besides the absolutely excellent acting, was the cinematography. Because what I was saying to you is like the grain on it looked older than Schindler's List,
Yeah.
which came out like, in the 90s. So for me, I thought that was really cool to see a movie that came out 26 years after that looks like an older black and white movie than Schindler's List, probably even older than Raging Bull in terms of how it looks. It really, and there's some shots, like I wish I had the movie so I could like pull out specific examples, but there are some shots in their composition that look just like movies from the 20s.
Yeah.
But that was a good thing because it had audio from modern day movies and it felt like a unique experience on like a cinematic level. And what was the do you remember the aspect ratio they were using?
Yeah, they went from 4:3 or the academic, basically the square, to wider screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when did they go back? They would
flip flop, but it wasn't like it would always be like a couple scenes in a row.
I didn't notice the first time they did it, and then you're like, "What aspect ratio? Where they at?" And I was like, "Oh my god, they did change."
Well, because it started and then it switched back, and then by the time they were on you said fourth, like I was like, "Oh wait, why they went back?" I mean, it was clearly to probably give the movie a picturesque feel, and I think movies like back then did have that more of a square look to it,
back in the day,
frame.
yeah.
So it probably wanted to just put less, images in the frame, and also the movie isn't even focused a lot on like the images in the background. It's kind of what's in your face. But I mean, I just thought it was a good looking movie, and the black and white. I hate when a movie uses black and white to be like, well, since everything's in color, here you go.
It wouldn't be different.
But this movie, I think it earned it, especially because it takes place in the 1890s, which is like kind of an obscure decade.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a very good looking movie. I think it deserves a nomination for cinematography.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, in terms of that, there's two things, as you said. It was the acting and the way that it looked.
Yeah.
In that way. So, I mean, the directing was just a choice, and it just, for me, it was slower paced. And for some people, they'll appreciate that. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, it really is all preference. Like, I don't think me or Taj are just saying this movie's bad or anything. It's like, and there are movies I like this. My favorite movies will always be the ones that I sort of feel like they're pushing themselves into a modern mythology and they they use their dialogue and their visuals and kind of amalgamate it all together to have a full vision. But for this movie, I feel like it's got a lot smaller of a goal, which is just to sort of put you in these lighthouse keeper shoes. Apparently, this movie was actually pretty tough to shoot, so I'm sure sort of make you feel like sharing their suffering and just kind of being engrossed into a story. And it's not as much about the characters. It's about the environment and what it does to the characters. Like I don't think the movie's trying to make these characters super interesting or have an arc or anything, which isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it just wants to be like, well, not all human beings in real life are as interesting as movie characters. Here's two people who would, one dude's just a stern lighthouse keeper, and then one guy's just this really quiet and young guy who's pushed over by the other guy and, in real life would probably go insane and, ends up doing some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think because of that, I still enjoyed the movie, even though it wasn't necessarily at the pace I'm personally used to.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, the characters themselves, the acting is what drew me in terms of like I could want to see what they wanted, where they were going, and the relationship that they had in terms of like first it was more of a master servant kind of thing, but then it became more of a bond, but then it became more of you realize that like he's really and so I mean I get that. I just how long did you see the movie was?
1 hour and 50 minutes.
50 or
50.
Yeah, 5. Okay.
I think too like the one thing that I just personally, like you said, didn't get was the mermaid supernatural element.
There's a couple like the blinding light thing.
The blinding light, and there's that blonde guy, or I think he was blonde. That third guy.
Oh
He was in the boat, and I was like, what's going on with that?
I woke up to that one.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fudge is this? Like, then I was like, okay.
The one thing I thought
like,
was,
did I miss something?
Like funny, something I liked a lot was the constant seagull. And that is sort of a marker to be like, well, here's what the seagull's doing today to piss him off and further push him towards this insanity. And like by the time some stuff goes on with the seagull, it's like, Jesus, this guy just hates seagulls. But you understand why. They're just so pestering. Yeah. And I think like the movie ends a little like abruptly, but again, it doesn't have much to do after it's. I don't want to spoil anything, so but like just on a level of like, here's what's going on in this guy's head. You can definitely see his frustration. Yeah. But yeah, and really quickly, Willem Dafoe, that scene where he's talking to, I forgot what they were talking about, but he starts to talk about Neptune striking you down or whatever. That, along with the scene from the trailer from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, along with like every scene from the Joker, best acted scenes.
Oh yeah, he
of
was
the year. The talk show
amazing.
scene from the Joker. But yeah, that scene was like, he just kept talking.
I was like,
and it kept
this
his
is-
intensity,
yeah.
kept his eye level, I mean, Jesus, that
You
is
want
like
like
acting.
a acting reel of just like, here's what I do.
Yeah,
That's like,
you put that
yeah,
on the reel.
yeah.
Defoe is like, he's very underrated.
And I knew he was a great actor, but honestly, I've always been like, because I had seen him in certain things, and it's like he played kind of like a type, like in Spider-Man, he's like, a villain and all that stuff, and it's like he always played like this with a smile, and he plays a
usually
Joker.
plays a character with some sort of lack of one human trait.
Yeah, and it's just like and this I saw range, and I was like, okay, this is what this guy is.
Yeah,
and
and
I
Pattinson,
appreciate it.
he killed it too. And their relationship and on an acting level are very much, here's the young guy, here's the older guy.
Yeah.
They do different things. They're good at different things. But here's the difference. But that scene with Defoe,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of scenes where he's good, but that scene, I was like, and the fact that it's not easy to not only talk in accent, which both of them do, but talk in a different dialect.
Yeah.
Because when you talk like how you talk, that's just what you're used to. You use your words, you use your slang. These guys are talking a whole different dialect. In a lot of ways, it's like how British people have to do with Shakespeare. It's like, it's not easy to do that. And William Dafoe, he gives it with flying colors. He
Yeah.
kills it.
Cool.
So it's kind of all I have to say about this movie. I think I'm gonna give this movie an 8.3.
Ooh.
I think it earned that rating. It definitely has a lot of very interesting ideas. Very well directed, very well shot, very well acted. The screenplay, I'm not gonna say it was bad because there wasn't probably much on the page.
Yeah.
A lot of it was silence and subtext. So solid screenplay. But I think this movie is definitely worthy of at least a cinematography and acting award for William Dafoe. Would he be supporting or main? Probably supporting. I'd say Pattinson's the main character.
Ooh, that's a good question.
They spend more time with
Yeah.
him. But William Dafoe, I mean, I don't know if I've seen a better supporting role this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you give it?
This is gonna be interesting to you because I think this is the first time we've split pretty far. I'm teetering between a 5 and a 6, and that's being nice. If it wasn't for the acting, 5.7. If it wasn't for the acting and the characters and the cinematography, I will never see this movie again. I mean, even if it's on TV, I will never see this movie again. And that's saying a lot because I will watch anything twice. So this there's some redeemable. It's not that this was bad. It's just
It's not a movie you'd watch.
This is in tree of life category for me. Like if that's on, I'm switching.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't even want to understand. It's like another language for me, and I have to realize that there's certain movies that are above my head, or at least artsy. And it's not artsy, but just it's a thinker.
Yeah, I'd say it was a little artsy.
Yeah, 2001.
Yeah, this is like 2001-ish.
Yeah, and
a lot of those movies, you see the commonality of silence and how those kind of
silence is a killer
have their
for
own
me,
sort
honestly,
of language.
yeah.
I've always thought this film was like
If you have more silence than dialogue in your movie, then you're gonna get a 5 or 6 from me, just in general. And it's only because I have to be fair. Like for me, that's my style.
Yeah.
I'm a nostalgic fool, but I can't stand silence. Yeah.
Yeah. If you saw this movie, let us know what you thought. Do you think it deserves any awards or anything? And is it one of your favorites? And
If you disagree with me, because you probably some of you probably saw it and you're like, oh, I loved it.
Yeah. So let us know what you thought of the movie and like, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Adios.